Hi, I'm Alex Ashford, 31, and 3 years after my father skipped my wedding, he texted me. Family dinner at 7 p.m. Important discussion. No hello. No apology. Just the summons. The message came in at 3:47 p.m. while I was sitting in my corner office on the 42nd floor, staring out over Manhattan like I hadn't clawed my way here with sheer spite and caffeine. 8 words. After 3 years of silence. The timing wasn't subtle either. That morning, Bloomberg had plastered my face all over the internet. Ashford Air rejects family fortune, builds $580 million hotel empire. Cute headline. Accurate. Petty. I loved it. I stared at my phone like it might explode. The last time my father, Gerald Ashford, had demanded I be somewhere at a specific time, I was standing in a groom's suite at the Rosewood, tie knotted, palms sweating, waiting for him to walk in so we could head down the aisle together. He never came. I remember checking my watch every 2 minutes. Remember my best man clearing his throat too often. Remember my husband, Daniel, squeezing my hand and whispering, "We don't need him." He was right. But damn if it didn't still hurt. Now here we were. 3 years later. Same control. Same tone. Different power balance. My assistant, Melissa, knocked and stepped in with her tablet. Forbes confirmed Thursday. Wall Street Journal wants a statement on Tokyo. Send the release? I said, still staring at my phone. And clear my evening. She hesitated. You have the investor dinner at Cipriani. They flew in from Singapore just for you. Reschedule it. I said. Family emergency. The word family tasted like rust. 3 years ago, my father had been very clear. Building a hotel business instead of joining Ashford Financial was unacceptable. Marrying Daniel, a brilliant architect whose parents immigrated from Mexico, was, in his words, a liability to the Ashford name. He didn't say it angrily. Worse. He said it calmly, like he was explaining gravity. You made your choice, he told me the day after the wedding. Don't come back when it fails. You're not an Ashford anymore. Except I was. That name followed me everywhere, whether I wanted it or not. So I used it. Every connection. Every lesson. Every damn expectation. Daniel designed the hotels. I ran operations. We started with one risky boutique property in Brooklyn that everyone said would flop. 5 years later, we owned 43 hotels across North America and Europe. And apparently, my father had been reading the news. At 6:30, I drove uptown toward the townhouse I grew up in. Same cold limestone facade. Same feeling in my chest. The doorman didn't recognize me. That should have told me everything. My mother opened the door herself, eyes tired, smile too tight. I'm so glad you came, she whispered, hugging me like I might disappear. Inside, my younger brother stood to greet me. You look good, he said quietly. Success suits you. Where's Dad? I asked. He exhaled. Study. Making us wait. Of course he was. And that's when my brother leaned in and said the words that finally made the text message make sense. Ashford Financial is in trouble. I took a sip of wine, heart pounding. And waited for my father to finally explain why I suddenly mattered again. My father finally entered like he always did, not walking so much as arriving. Gerald Ashford filled the room without trying. 63, silver at the temples, posture still military straight, the kind of man who looked like he never once apologized to a chair for bumping into it. Sit, he said, already pulling his own chair back. No hello. No son. Just a command. We sat at a table built for 16 people, set for 4. The housekeeper served the first course and disappeared like she knew better than to linger. Gerald waited until the door closed before speaking, hands folded, eyes on me like I was a quarterly report. I assume you're aware of recent developments, he said. I'm aware my face has been everywhere lately, I replied. If that's what you mean. Thomas shifted beside me. My mother stared down at her napkin like it had personally disappointed her. Your company's growth has been impressive, Gerald continued, jaw tight around the word. Tokyo is ambitious. 15 properties in the first phase. I set my fork down. Dad, I didn't come here for feedback. He leaned back. Ashford Financial is facing challenges. There it was. The market's volatile, he went on. Certain mergers fell through. The board wants diversification into growth sectors. Hospitality is performing exceptionally well. I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Short. Sharp. Ugly. You didn't text me after my wedding, I said. Didn't text me when Daniel and I nearly lost our first property. Didn't text me when we opened our 10th hotel. But the second your board gets nervous, suddenly it's family dinner? My father's jaw flexed. This is business. Funny, I said. You made it personal 3 years ago. He ignored that. We're proposing a merger. Ashford Financial acquires 60% of Ashford & Cole Hospitality. There it was. The real reason? You'd retain operational control. He continued smoothly. We provide capital, stability, access. Your shares would be worth significantly more under our umbrella. And my husband? I asked. A pause. Too long. Daniel would receive a generous payout for his stake. Translation removed. Erased. Same as always. I looked at my mother. She didn't look back. You cut me off because I married him, I said quietly. And now you want to profit off the company we built together while pretending he's a footnote. You chose him over this family. Gerald snapped. No, I said, standing. I chose a life where love wasn't conditional. His face reddened. You're being emotional. And you're being desperate. I shot back. You skipped my wedding. Told me I wasn't your son anymore. And now you want me to save your company like none of that happened. This offer stands, he said coldly. Think rationally. I am, I replied. Rationally, I'm walking away. If you leave, he warned, don't expect another invitation. I turned at the door. Good. I don't accept invitations from men who only remember they have sons when they're bleeding. Outside, Thomas followed me into the cold night air. He's scared, my brother said quietly. And when Dad's scared, he gets ugly. I nodded. Then he should have learned by now. I didn't know it yet, but my father wasn't done. He was just getting started. 2 days later, the calls started. Melissa stood in my office doorway holding her tablet like it might bite her. We've had 3 investor withdrawals this morning, she said carefully. I didn't look up right away. Tokyo? All 3. She confirmed. Same wording. Concerns about management stability. That phrase felt rehearsed. Sanitized. Weaponized. Who fed them that? I asked. That's the strange part, she said. Each one mentioned information coming from someone familiar with your family situation. I closed my eyes. Gerald Ashford didn't get his way, so he went scorched earth. I called Thomas immediately. What do you know? A long sigh. Dad had lunch with Richard Whitmore yesterday. Kent Capital's board? I snapped. Yeah. And 2 other casual meetings this week. I don't know with who yet. I stared out at the skyline, anger settling into something colder. He's trying to destabilize my business to force the merger. He thinks you'll fold, Thomas said quietly. He always does. That night, I went home to our brownstone in Brooklyn. Daniel was in his office, sleeves rolled up, sketching layouts for Singapore. He looked up the second he saw my face. He made his move, I said. I told him everything. The dinner. The offer. The sabotage. Daniel listened without interrupting, jaw tightening with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. Okay, he said. Then we stop playing defense. I blinked. What? Your father's desperate, Daniel continued. Which means he's predictable. He pulled up a file on his screen. Grandview Properties. My stomach flipped. That portfolio? He's bidding on that to stabilize Ashford Financial. Exactly, Daniel said. 15 prime hotels. 3 in Manhattan. If he wins that, he buys himself time. And if we win it, I said slowly. Daniel smiled, the calm, dangerous one. He doesn't. The plan snowballed fast. Calls across time zones. Meetings that blur together. Tokyo. Singapore. Dubai. People who used to court us instead of questioning us. Within 3 weeks, we had a consortium. The night before final bids were due, I got a call from Vincent Morrison, my father's oldest partner. I shouldn't be calling, he said. But Gerald asked me to block your bid. I waited. I refused. Vincent continued. He's spiraling. So focused on beating you that he's forgetting how to lead. The next morning, we submitted our offer. 47 million higher than Ashford Financial's. 3 days of silence followed. Then my phone rang. Mr. Ashford, the Grandview CEO said, your consortium has been selected. I hung up and laughed, the kind that comes out half relief, half disbelief. An hour later, Thomas called. The board is furious, he said. Dad's threatening to disown me now. He already disowned me, I replied. He's out of leverage. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Because when my father ran out of power over me, he turned to my mother. My mother called the next morning. Not a text. Not through my assistant. A direct call to my cell, which she almost never did. Please, she said before I could even say hello. Please meet me for lunch. We met at a quiet French place in Midtown, the kind with white tablecloths and voices kept deliberately low. My mother looked smaller than I remembered. Perfect hair. Perfect suit. Hands trembling as she lifted her teacup. Your father is talking about divorcing me, she whispered. The words landed heavy. What? He says this is all my fault, she said, eyes filling. That if I'd supported him more when you married Daniel, if I hadn't secretly encouraged you, none of this would have happened. I sat back slowly. When did he start saying this? She hesitated. Answer enough. He sent you, I said quietly. No, she insisted too quickly. I came on my own. I want my family back. I leaned forward. He's using you to get to me. Just like the dinner. Just like the investors. She reached across the table, gripping my hand. Pull back from the Grandview deal. Let him win this one. If the board calms down, maybe he will too. There it was. You want me to sacrifice my company, I said, to save your marriage. Her shoulders shook. I've given 35 years to this life. I don't know who I am without it. I closed my eyes for a moment. I saw her in the pew at my wedding, crying quietly while everyone pretended not to notice the empty seat beside her. I love you, I said softly. But I won't set myself on fire anymore. I stood, leaving cash on the table. She didn't follow. 4 weeks later, the Grandview deal closed. 15 properties. 58 hotels total. Valuation jumped to $890 million. The headlines were brutal. Ashford Financial loses key assets. Is Gerald Ashford losing his edge? 2 board members resigned. Shares dropped 8%. 3 months later, I was standing in the ballroom of our newest Manhattan property during its opening gala when Melissa leaned in. You have a visitor, she whispered. He's not on the list. I already knew. Gerald Ashford stood in the lobby, coat on, shoulders heavier, power gone but pride still hanging on by a thread. They voted me out, he said flatly. 40 years and it ended in one meeting. I nodded. I'm sorry. He studied the room. Your husband is talented. That nearly stopped my heart. I was wrong, he said. About him. About you. The words cost him. I could see it. I miss your wedding because I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid you didn't need me anymore. I didn't, I said gently. But I still wanted you there. We stood in silence. Would you like to meet Daniel? I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. They shook hands. Awkward. Careful. Real. And for the first time in my life, my father looked like a man instead of a judge. After the gala ended and the guests thinned out, my father didn't linger. He never knew how to exist in rooms that weren't his anymore. He shook Daniel's hand one last time, nodded at me, and left without asking for anything. No dinner. No meeting. No favor. That alone told me more than any apology could. The next morning, a package arrived at my office. No return address. Inside was a small velvet box. I knew what it was before I opened it. My grandmother's pearl cufflinks, the ones she used to joke I'd borrow, someday when I became a real Ashford man. My father had locked them away after the wedding, like punishment by inheritance. The note was short, handwritten. These were always meant to be yours. I forgot that being right isn't the same as being a father. Dad. I sat there longer than I meant to, turning the pearls between my fingers. They didn't feel like victory. They felt like an ending. Thomas called later that afternoon. He's different, he said. Quieter. Actually listening. It's unsettling. Growth looks weird on him, I replied. Mom texted that evening. Sunday brunch? No pressure. Just us. I stared at the message for a long time before answering. Maybe in a few weeks. No. Not yet. Business didn't slow down just because my family drama finally did. Singapore moved forward. Tokyo broke ground. Reporters kept asking if I planned to reconcile with the Ashford Empire. I always said the same thing. I already built mine. One night, weeks later, Daniel and I sat on our roof with takeout containers and cheap wine, the city humming below us. Do you regret any of it? He asked. I thought about the wedding. The silence. The sabotage. The fight it took to get here. No, I said. But I wish it hadn't cost so much. Daniel nodded. At least now the cost is paid. He was right. The debt was settled. I didn't need my father's approval anymore. And that meant, for the first time, I could decide whether I wanted his presence. That choice, finally, fully mine, felt like the real inheritance. A week after the gala, the fallout really began. Not in headlines. Not in boardrooms. In quieter, messier ways. Ashford Financial announced a strategic restructuring. That's corporate code for we messed up and everyone knows it. Gerald's name quietly disappeared from the website. Thomas stayed on, but in a reduced role, no longer the golden heir, just another executive with a last name that used to mean something. He called me late one night. I don't think he knows who he is without the company, Thomas admitted. He's restless. Cleaning out his study like he's erasing himself. That image stuck with me, my father, who once ruled rooms with a glance, reduced to sorting papers no one needed anymore. A few days later, my mother came to Brooklyn unannounced. Daniel was polite but alert, hovering like a man ready to physically block emotional shrapnel if needed. She hugged me too tightly, then just looked at our place. The exposed brick. The framed hotel sketches. The quiet confidence of a home built without Ashford money. I never thought you'd end up here, she said softly. Neither did I replied. But I'm glad I did. She sat at our kitchen table, hands folded. Your father doesn't sleep anymore. He keeps replaying your wedding day out loud, like if he says it differently this time, it changes. That hurt more than I expected. I needed him then, I said quietly. Not now. Then. She nodded. I know. For the first time, she didn't defend him. Didn't soften it. Just let the truth sit. Before she left, she stopped at the door. You don't owe him forgiveness, she said. But thank you for not destroying him when you could have. I closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling hard. 2 nights later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Alex, my father said. His voice sounded smaller. I won't take much of your time. He never used to ask permission. I'm selling the Connecticut house. He continued. Downsizing. Starting over, I suppose? That sounds healthy, I said carefully. A pause. I wanted to ask, not for money, not for help. Just, if you'd consider dinner? You. Me. No business. The old instinct flared, suspicion, armor, anger. But underneath it was something else. Exhaustion. Closure knocking instead of breaking in. Okay, I said finally. One dinner. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. We met at a quiet steakhouse near the river. No private room. No power play. Just 2 men across a table. I spent my life confusing control with love, he said halfway through. By the time I realized the difference, you were already gone. I didn't respond right away. You didn't lose me, I said eventually. You pushed me. He nodded. And you survived. I didn't just survive. I corrected. I built something. With someone you tried to erase. I know, he said. And that's the part one can't undo. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. I'm proud of you, he said. Even if I don't deserve to say that. I didn't hug him. But I didn't walk away angry either. And for the first time, that felt like enough. 6 months later, my life looked quieter on the surface. Same company. Bigger numbers. Less noise. Chin and Ashford Hospitality crossed the $1 billion valuation mark without fireworks or champagne. Just a signed document, a handshake, and Daniel kissing my temple in the hallway outside the boardroom. Success didn't feel explosive anymore. It felt solid. Earned. Heavy in the right way. My father moved to Connecticut. He didn't call it retirement. He called it downsizing, like his ego still needed square footage. He sent one photo, him standing awkwardly on a porch with too much railing and not enough authority. No caption. Just proof of life. We had dinner once a month after that. Nothing dramatic. No apologies on loop. No attempts to rewrite history. Just meals where he listened more than he spoke, where he asked Daniel questions and actually waited for the answers. The first time he asked my husband for advice on a renovation idea, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom and stare at the mirror until my hands stopped shaking. Healing didn't arrive with violins. It arrived with restraint. My mother came to Brooklyn regularly now. She liked our kitchen. Said it felt like a place where people were allowed to breathe. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she laughed too loud. Sometimes she just watched Daniel and me move around each other like a practice dance. I didn't know marriages could look like this, she admitted once. Neither did I growing up. Thomas stayed at Ashford Financial through the restructuring, then quietly left 6 months later. He joined a venture fund instead, one that didn't treat loyalty like leverage. When he told me, he looked lighter. Like he'd finally stepped out of our father's shadow instead of trying to reshape it. One night, after a long day, Daniel and I sat on the floor of our living room surrounded by blueprints and take-out containers. I was wearing my grandmother's pearl cufflinks, not because they were heirlooms, but because they finally felt like mine. You ever think about how different everything could have gone? Daniel asked. All the time, I said. But I don't wish it were. He smiled. Good. Neither do I. My father called the following week. I wanted to tell you something, he said. The board asked if I'd consult on a project. I said no. I waited. I told them I already lost one legacy trying to control it. He continued. I'm not losing what's left chasing relevance. That was the closest thing to wisdom he'd ever offered me. After the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. Not in a sad way. In a complete one. I used to think success was proving him wrong. Then I thought it was outgrowing him. Turns out, the real victory was no longer needing the comparison at all. I didn't win because my company hit the news. I won because when my father finally showed up, I was already standing exactly where I belong, steady, unafraid, and no longer waiting for permission to be whole. Update. Hi, I'm Alex Ashford, 32 now, and this is the update I never expected to write. It's been just over a year since everything blew up. The merger attempt, the sabotage, the billion-dollar headlines, the uncomfortable dinners where my father finally learned how to listen instead of command. Life settled into something resembling normal, which for me mostly meant airports, hotel openings, and trying not to forget which time zone I was in when calling home. Then, 3 weeks ago, my phone rang at 6:12 a.m. It was Thomas. Dad collapsed? He said. No drama. No build-up. Heart attack. He's alive. But it was close. I was on the first flight to Connecticut. Walking into that hospital room felt disturbingly similar to waiting for him at my wedding. Same sterile smell. Same tightness in my chest. Same fear of unfinished business. Gerald Ashford looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, tubes everywhere, ego finally stripped of its armor. When he woke up and saw me, he didn't pretend to be strong. I thought I had more time, he said hoarsely. So did I replied. The doctors were blunt. Stress had wrecked him. Years of control, rage, and refusing to bend had taken their toll. He wasn't dying, but the version of him that tried to dominate everything? That guy was gone. During recovery, something strange happened. He let go. He asked Daniel to handle selling the last big property he still owned. Trusted him. Actually trusted him. When paperwork came up, he asked me to explain things instead of asserting authority he no longer had. One afternoon, while we sat in silence watching bad hospital TV, he said, "You were right to walk away. I wasn't someone worth following back then." That was it. No speech. No tears. Just truth. When he was discharged, he didn't go back to the Connecticut house. He moved into a small condo near us in Brooklyn. Not to interfere. Not to reclaim space. Just to be closer. We set boundaries immediately. Clear ones? He respected them. The man who once used silence as a weapon now texted things like, "Dinner this week? No worries if you're busy." The real shock came last Sunday. We hosted brunch. My mother cooked. Daniel handled coffee. My father washed dishes without being asked, badly, but earnestly. At one point, he looked around the room and said, "I spent my life trying to build a legacy. Turns out, I almost missed the only one that mattered." I didn't forgive him all at once. I don't think forgiveness works like that. But I did something better. I stopped bracing for disappointment. Chen and Ashford Hospitality just broke ground on our first South American property. Dad came to the site visit. He stayed quiet. Let Daniel lead. Let me decide. When reporters asked him how it felt seeing his son succeed independently, he said, "Proud. And grateful I didn't lose him completely." That sentence would have been impossible 2 years ago. So that's the update. No explosions. No revenge. No perfect ending. Just a man who finally learned too late, but not too late, That love isn't leverage, family isn't ownership, and success means nothing if you burn everyone trying to stand tallest. And me? I'm doing better than ever. Not because my dad finally showed up, but because when he did, I no longer needed him to save me.